Thank you so much for tuning into Growth Island. So today I have a guest that I've been waiting for in months to get the chance to talk to her. She's an extremely cool professor. And for all of the nerds out there like myself, she's the person you want to talk to when you're interested about health. She's not only a professor of the University of Geneva, she has also been a visiting professor at Copenhagen University. She's been a visiting scholar at Stanford University, at the medical center. And she founded the coolest lab, at least when you're a data nerd like myself and interested in biohacking, which is the quality of life. So she's a director there as well, and has actually done a lot of research on figuring out how do we improve the quality of life and how can we use technology. So for all of the biohackers out there that have the Oura rings and so on, well, Kat Wac, she's actually testing this and figuring out how it works. So Kat, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce my lab to the geeks and cool people out there. And I wanted to say that everything started also because I was very much interested in quantified self myself. And starting with the first Fitbit back in 2010, being mostly sedentary and also very much in my head, right? So you can imagine, and really looking into how do I improve my performance from cognitive perspective. And then one day, I was living in the US, and we had access to this early tester systems subscriptions, and Fitbit was one of them. And we got, all of us in the lab, we got this little Fitbit. Maybe some of you remember there was a Fitbit 1. There was a clip, which many cases we've been washing it and losing it, but I was pretty consistent having it. And then the first time I realized I'm not doing enough for my body. And if I want to continue further in improving health and quality of life of myself and others, I better start by being an example. So I also lost some weight and improved my physical performance. I improved my sleep, started to take care of myself better, and the journey went on. But you can imagine, I'm talking about 2010, so it's not so long time ago. And among these different, I'll just say that among these different devices, I still stay with Fitbit, but now we have an Oura ring, then other devices. Actually, I have 2 devices here. We're testing different Samsung and Google devices and other wearables, as well as more intrusive, like continuous glucose monitor.
That's fantastic. That's like the dream for most of the biohackers out there, to actually have a lab and test it out properly. I saw a picture as well with you with the glucose monitoring. It's one of the experiments I want to do myself as well. And several of my friends have done, to really understand like what's the impact on your body, not just like what's the standard impact from a banana or something else, because it is different on an individual level, right?
Correct. Yes.
So on this journey of doing research and setting up the quality of life lab, what's some of the things that you looked into and tested, and what's some of the takeaways, learnings?
Yeah. So before we start into what we have been testing and kind of devices and experiments we have done, I would like to just put in 2 minutes like a pitch, scientific base. I was thinking about sharing the screen, but I can do that without support. I'm hoping to draw the picture in our own minds. So first of all, we all understand that our behaviors in the short term will lead us to different health conditions and quality of life in the long term. So if we're keeping sedentary, if we're keeping bad nutrition and lack of sleep, day by day, the damage accumulates, and then somewhere later in life, it comes out in form of disease, right? So there's expression. And these behaviors, unfortunately, are accounting for 40 to 60% of our future health state. So when somebody says, "Oh, it's about genetics," and I have bad genes or something, so it's genetics is only 40% of expression of future, up to 40%. Again, there are different papers and different partitioning, and there's also a percentage of healthcare system and society and overall context in which we live, because we can be perfect genes and great behavior, but the context could be killing us, right? Pollution or other aspects. So nevertheless, behavior accounts for our future health state and quality of life. And in our lab, we are focusing on this behavior aspects of the behaviors, daily life behaviors, repeating behaviors, longitudinal behaviors, and we're looking into this. In the literature, it's called even behaviome. It's behavior markers, right? So again, linking to genetics, genome. So now we have behavior. And how now again, let me think from the scientific perspective, what's the current standard method for assessment of behaviors? Unfortunately, it's a self-report. Self-report, meaning if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, what have you eaten and how have you slept? Oh, actually, it will ask you to fill up a form of 10, 12, 15 questions based on which you're going to be screened, maybe. And even some of these particular questionnaires are validated for a pre-diagnosis or diagnosis. So they do have some powers. However, it's all self-reports. How have you slept last month? How much fat you are eating? How much exercise are you getting, right? So it's memory based. It's biased because you may have a socially acceptable response. You don't want to be this bad person, right? So you may answer differently than what really happens in your life. It's very infrequent. It's very quantitative. It's very subjective. And very kind of punctual assessment based on which the decisions are going to be made, right? So the clinical decision making is currently biased towards this qualitative data sources. So what we are trying to do in our lab, we're going to bring this quantitative data sources. We are trying to bring this wearables and the smartphone as a sensor, right? So even the way you're touching your phone is indicative of your stress, of your current interest, right? So if you have a lot of social support and social we should not mix social support and social relationship. There are two different things. But you may have a lot of social relationship, but not a lot of social support. But there's a way of deriving based on the way you touch your phone and how you use your apps. What's your level of social relationship, of your connectivity, and what's your level of mobility then related to this connectivity with other humans, which is very important for our quality of life. What's your physical activity? I mean, that's one of, again, the basic ones. What's your sleep, right? So in one of our research papers, we were just very curious about how you touch your phone and how does it relate to your sleep patterns. And actually for digitally native and for all of us who are geeks and really touching our phones as the last thing in the evening and first thing in the morning, the phone is pretty accurate sleep duration sensor. And then guess what? For the persons in our study who are not sleeping well at night and they were touching their phone, we also were able to see that, right? So there are interruptions in the sleep, but why? How did we know it? Because they touched their phone and again they use some apps and only after they let it go. So there were this holes in sleep were indicative by touching the phone, interacting with some applications. But what I would like to say, so we are really trying to bring additional value from the data, the quantitative data provided by these different personalized, miniaturized technologies, which are on or around the body, which are then going to be supporting evidence to what do you say? What's the self-report? What have you been reporting as indicators of your sleep, physical activity, nutrition, stress, or other aspects? And in the lab, we are. I named the lab quality of life. It came from the fact that I started my research on mobile networks many years ago, when there was a 3G network as the first, one of the first networks, which was this high performance networks. Then we went to 4G. And in the meantime, I was working on so-called quality of service. So what is the specific connectivity these networks provide, and then quality of experience. So what do we experience while using these different applications provided by these networks? And then the next step was the quality of life. And it's a very interesting path I made from very quantitative work to qualitative. And now I'm bringing it back and saying, okay, there's a lot of data we can bring to support the quality of life assessments. And I would love to provide it. So from scientific perspective, last thing I would like to say is that World Health Organization defines first health as a state of not only a state of complete absence. Okay, I'm not citing the definition completely, but there's not only a state of a complete absence of disease, but it's also related to good well-being, mental health, physical health. And recently, the set of scientists also came together and then came back to the world with British Medical Journal article opinion on how we should change the definition of health, which then will influence the quality of life in a moment, I will say. The definition of health should be changed to more incorporating the aspects of self-management. Self-management in different contexts of life, self-management in a view of different challenges in the life, which are physical, again, mental or social or contextual. And then the quality of life is then this way of feeling in daily life that it feels that it's fulfilling the needs and expectations of the individual. And then again, when you look at this and when you would analyze these definitions and say, okay, so all of this is qualitative again. So what are you saying, Kate? What are you exactly doing there? So we are looking into, we're not really, how do we say, married to the definitions. We're really respecting it and referencing. However, what we're looking forward is what are this consensus on what are the variables influencing quality of life. So again, getting back to World Health Organization, we came back to understanding that there is a World Health Organization quality of life definition and a model, which includes 4 domains influencing quality of life of the individual. As you can imagine, it's physical health, psychological health, social relationships, and environmental. So looks great. It looks very holistic, right, from the high level point of view. And then when you dig deeper, you can see that there is a very nice and very clear definition of 24 variables, which are then including in this big subdomains, which are then constituting individuals' quality of life. So in our lab, we're then looking into these 24 variables, and we're looking into what are the personal technologies which are bringing the data sources for supporting the quantification of behaviors or lack of behaviors in this particular variable, and then how does it relate to overall definition of quality of life. And again, we're looking what is self-reported right now, because that's the gold standard. When you go to the doctor, when you collect data in clinical trials for any new drug or treatment or anything, the gold standard is still self-report. So we're bringing technology and we're statistically calibrating these different data sources, like how many steps you've taken and how are you generally sleeping, and what would you answer on the question of physical activity or sleep, which you will answer because you're being asked, because that's the gold standard, that's what the doctor will look at. And then how do we bring this different quantitative data sources to the table, to the evidence. And then hopefully at some point, we're not going to ask you so often. We're going to also stop asking you. I don't want to say that we're completely going to replace self-reports with the technology, but maybe there's one day when it will happen where the technology, the data sources, the automatic modeling and quantification of these different behaviors will be bringing enough available and reliable I want to say so accurate evidence to the system, such as the system, whatever the system is, or the doctor will be able to make accurate clinical decisions with respect to changing of the health states or quality of life. Yes, so I hope that answered the question about the research part. So the framing of what's happening right now when we're bringing these technologies, and then how do we also see the current state of the art. And then the question was also about the devices. Is that correct?
Yeah, so super interesting, and also how to look at quality of life holistically. So yeah, what's one of what are some of the devices that you've seen that can actually make an impact, and what have you learned from doing some research on that?
Yes, thank you. So I'll start with the fact that I already pointed out that many of colleagues like me in computer science, health informatics, but also the field itself started from physical activity. Physical activity was the first. We started with accelerometer, right? So our phones were our first sensors, where we developed methods quantifying automatically physical activity in terms of different levels of physical activity, from sedentarism to vigorous physical activity when somebody's jogging, running, by means of doing the signal processing on the phone itself. Later on, with the Fitbits and now with all these different wearables, this particular data sources become cheap and also accurate enough that we are not doing any more signal processing, which is deriving from API, the labeled data sets, right? And physical activity is fundamental because, as we know that, as I told you at the beginning, the behaviors lead us to the further to the bad shape later in life, and inactivity is one of the top behavior risk for further chronic illness later in life. And another one is nutrition. Nutrition is harder to quantify. Nutrition still relies on self-reports. So in our research, we have tried. We also developed some apps and like this loggers and everything. And we also seen that ourselves and none of our users wanted to use it beyond 3 days, like putting all these meals. And even in United States, when everything is easier because there's so many standardized meals and people buy out a lot of this packaged foods and things, it was a pain. It was a pain to assess the nutrition. So in the recent research, we access nutrition from the other perspective, from glucose monitoring, continuous glucose monitoring, which is very interesting aspect of showing the body response. So it's really measuring the body response to the nutritional load, to the nutrition value of what's getting in respect to carbohydrates, yes, which are then indicative of really the metabolic system response and glycemic index of the foods, and I think many of you heard and the work around this, right? So myself, I started to be very curious about this, using this device, and also being very curious, inspecting my own data early 2016, where I got hold of one of these devices, and then I have been really testing it on so many different things. I've been eating things I like, eating things I don't like, just to see the glycemic response and to see the damage I made. The worse glycemic index, the worse response, the worse spike in glucose in the blood, and the worse the body, the more trouble for the body, right, for the metabolism to process it. So why I'm saying this, because again, nutrition was the second risk factor for the chronic illness in long term, but also many of us, we do not know how do we respond to different foods. And I'm not a diabetic, and I went specifically after this continuous glucose monitor whenever I could, because my mother is type 2 diabetic. It's a lifestyle disease, so I also know, I'm not leaving my mother. It's 20 years I left the house and everything. However, maybe there's some genetic predisposition of me responding to different foods differently. Maybe in general, also I was thinking, maybe the things I'm eating are not really helpful for me. So I got hold of this specific sensor. And then a specific recent paper, which we had, was a much more randomized controlled trial on myself and my colleague, but at the end we presented data only for me, for 4 weeks, where continuous glucose monitor was used as a outcome for sleep deprivation. So the controlling factor was lack of sleep. So I was randomized in specific nights to sleep only 4 hours, and I was
That's tough.
Very
not a pleasant experiment.
Not a pleasant experiment. We ethically was we've been experimenting ourselves, and imagine one day, once every few days at random. It never will happen one night after the other, because we had a specific. When you read the paper, you'll see that there needed to be so-called washout period when I could sleep in and have a kind of a basal glucose response, and then only then there was a randomization of intervention or not. So one day I would receive around 5 p.m. in the afternoon an email, and he would say, okay, tonight I randomize you into short sleep, right? So tonight 4 hours. So what do? You keep working until 4 a.m. whatever. But it was tough. It was really tough. But I remember I did it a lot of times when I was a student, right? So Maybe because I'm older, it was tough. But it's a damage. It's a damage to the body. So the next day response, the next day there's more cravings, and there is a worse glycemic response. The body is just tired. The metabolism is just impaired, and I can imagine the older you get, it's even worse. So I may repeat this experiment somewhere in the future. But okay, so I went from physical activity to nutrition. I also would like to indicate that with advent with availability of these different wearables, we have sleep data, which is widely available for analysis. So we also did analytics of, in one of the research projects, we have a cohort of 70 seniors who are wearing Fitbit device for 3 years. So it's non-interventional study, it's purely observational. And we could also see who is sleeping or not enough, right? And also compare to the recommended hours of sleep. Also, we can see who is napping in the afternoon. We can see who is really waking up in the middle of the night and having a longer break, which will indicate some kind of insomnia patterns. And we did not do anything with this particular observed patterns, but later on we are really putting it into perspective of how this particular continuous behavior, because having up to 3 years of data, it's not like this week, and it's for seniors, so it's not like this exam or this deadline, this thing, that thing, right? So you may say they have enough time to self-manage their behavior, so it's not really that they like had a specific period of time when they could not sleep. So generally their sleep patterns are analyzed towards the having the future risk of cardiovascular diabetes, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So it has not much to do with sleep, but generally we are looking into, if you continue like this, we're looking into building computational models. What you see from the data, this is your behavior. If you continue like this is a particular risk of chronic illness in the future. We also started one project in which we try to map on your current behavior on the future risk of dementia, which is also very prevalent disease in older populations. But this is much more harder because the computational models, the medical models for risk of Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer and dementia are less defined as comparing to the cardiovascular or diabetes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just
continue on the devices.
So, okay. Just jumping back. So with the glucose monitoring, one of the things that you saw was lack of sleep. It made it harder for you, or your glucose response would be higher. So
correct.
And so that implication for people listening is that they probably already know that sleep is important, but this is kind of another evidence. Also, if they want to have a stable blood sugar and don't have the energy going up and down, and also if someone wants to lose weight, you talked about the cravings, that if you don't get sleep, you'll be more hungry.
Correct. Yes. For carbs, like I maybe again we need more samples, but I think all of us have this feeling of like the body is looking for energy, right? So unconsciously you're looking for carbs. Yes, I wanted to talk about the continuous glucose monitor because I was also so we're getting back to this as an example of, for example, if you have large meal, at the end of the day, I think we all know it's going to influence badly our sleep, and it's the sleep quality, but also it's really the the processing of the glucose goes through the night. So the worse, the more amount of food and carbs is being processed in the evening, then it's like the longer at night there is influence. Alcohol is also very interesting, right? So you see, getting drunk for science, why not, right?
Yeah. So you get paid to get drunk?
I did not get paid. It's my own research, so I'm not sacrificing my own body, right? So, but for me, getting drunk is like I don't need a lot, like few glasses of wine or something, and then you see that it stays up. The glucose stays up. Okay, so wine paired with like some sweets and carbs. Again, I'm not saying just wine, but like alcohol, and then glucose stays up. And then I remember one example where I could see that the total washout was around like 5 in the morning, So it's like many hours
Yeah.
down the stream, and then maybe you wake up at 7, 8, and so it's like how much time the body you really had to rest, right? Because all this other time is working on processing whatever you insert. So yeah, that made me think. That made me think about this. I also wanted to say that for those who do not have a continuous glucose monitor, you have another indicator very easily available in your device: heart rate, resting heart rate. The resting heart rate, specifically at night, is an indicator also of how rested you are, how your body is rested. It can be that you are under a mental stress, and then you have, if you have enough data, you know what's your like a baseline, what's your like good day, and you also know when you wake up rested the next day, and like, okay, that was a good night, my body relaxed, and then you can see that your resting heart rate at night, the moment when you fell asleep, went down to you like baseline and just stayed nicely, neatly the whole night. And maybe sometimes you had the dreams. I also had examples when I had dreams and there was the spikes, and I remember the dream or something, and then go back to like nice, stable. But then again, if you eat a lot and you have social interactions, I'm not talking about eating, but also like a social interaction. So it's from psychophysiological perspective, it's called arousal, like any physical or mental arousal. Like there's a lot of interaction, or maybe there's a party or something, and maybe you have not even drunk or eaten a lot, but there's still arousal. And you go to sleep, and then it's like a glucose again. It also starts for me. If you talk about my baseline is in 50s, if I'm really on a really good terms with my body, and around summers are also lower for me for a resting heart rate, on 48 or something. So imagine that it started at 80. Like there was a day when it's like, oh, there was a lot of activity, and then maybe there's stress, and there's this arousal. I met somebody, whatever. There's dinner and whatever. All this input, and I go to bed on 80, and it also takes hours before it goes back to like 50. Right. So then you can again think about, it's a bit like the continuous glucose monitor. It's like the body needed to process all these things, and alcohol, in general, the arousal, and
so it aligns very much with many of the other guests that I had on, that says like, don't eat at least 2 hours before you go to bed, ideally 3 or 4 hours, so that you will have better sleep. Don't exercise intensely before. But so what about sex before bed? Is that bad for heart rate variability, or what should the listeners think out there?
Oh my God! I knew that you were going to ask this question. Yes, so I have a response. Yes, it's very good. Yes. So first of all, I have examples from a continuous glucose monitor where there will be this high glycemic response to a dinner. There will be some alcohol and arousal, and then the glucose goes back to the normal levels after orgasm.
Okay, so you can drink alcohol, eat a lot of carbs, as long as you get an orgasm, then you're all right for sleep.
But I'm talking for myself. So
yes.
I do hope that other bodies react the same way. And yes. I really discussed it with the experts in at Stanford. I followed the course, and I was presenting as a case. And so I'm lost in biology and chemistry, but there was a biochemical response, a body response along orgasm, which is then kind of resetting the liver, which is great, right? So you can say, okay, can do a lot of things and just get an orgasm, right? Or two, or whatever, for female, yes. Right? So many more, and the more the better. But yes, so that's one of the responses. And then from the heart rate perspective, of course, it goes up, and then but there is this calming effect afterwards, right? So yes, it's very good. Sex before sleep is really good. Yes.
Cool. That's interesting and good to know. That I think that is good to know for the listener as well. If they drinks a lot of alcohol, it's good to remember to have sex before going to bed to not get the negative effects of the alcohol.
Yes. Another data source which can help you to support this particular hypothesis, and again, it's available in Oura Ring and Apple Watch, but many more it's coming, I hope, sooner or later. It's a heart rate variability. So not just the resting heart rate where you go to sleep and looking into how your body relaxes, but like this really the derived measure from electrocardiogram, from really how the heart works, and the higher the higher the heart rate variability, the better relaxation, the better state and shape you are. And again, I love it in the Aura Ring, and that's why I also left Apple Watch behind, because Apple Watch had a few measures through the night, while Aura Ring is continuous heart rate variability through the night. So you can also relate it to the parts of the night which were more relaxed than the others. I also see myself, I do yoga and meditation 3 times a week, and these particular nights are always better. I would like to say statistically significantly better, but I have not done the stats yet. So I just see visually that they are better. They have better numbers at the nights when I do yoga and meditation than other nights. I also have to say that I also eat less these particular days. So that's maybe another correlation. So whenever you do any self-experimentation, just mind your different conditions and confounding variables, right? So whenever I'm saying the yoga meditation, and then I do know also that I eat very little dinner, and I never had any specific, I'm never looking for any party or social interaction afterwards. So that's also all these different variables influencing the fact that the night is really nice and relaxing and restoring. I would say, not relaxing, restoring for the body. Yes.
Makes sense. But that's also what makes it so hard, like all of the different factors that can influence. And also just when we do, I think that's why the whole n=1, that you need to test it on yourself, is so important. And there's like, it's hard to like do the study to see what really works and what will work for you, right? You can see what works for the majority of people, but again, you have to test it. I saw a guy called Frederick Ackerman, a good friend of mine. He did a presentation on glucose monitoring. So he's really been geeking out on that. And he talked about this big study from, I think it was South Korea, with like 50,000 men or so. And they could see that the response from eating a banana and many different things were very different from each individual. So we have this glucose index for food. But what that study showed was that it's not that accurate, even though we think that that's kind of like, oh, this is how a banana will affect you or something else. It's very individual.
Yes, and I wanted to point out that then it relates, the research which leads this goes into microbiome.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the processing system, right? So assumption that we all have the same processing system, it's invalid. And now it's like, how do you respond to banana versus me? That's why it was very fascinating for me to get this continuous glucose and saying, okay, I'm thinking this salad and this thing I'm preparing for myself every now and then, it's good, right? So how good or bad is that? And to see spikes and to see them. I wanted to say that before I forget, there is a beautiful resource for anybody who is interested in N1 studies or any self-experimentation. You know Gary Wolf. Many of you know Gary Wolf as a founder of Quantified Self community. He's very much involved in community called Open Humans. There's an online website, Open Humans. And I hope many of you, after what I'm saying right now, are going to come out every Thursday at 7 p.m. Geneva, Copenhagen time, so like evening dinner. There is a 1 hour Zoom session with Gary Wolf and the team of Open Humans. So I'm participating more like advisor as well, and listening in and learning from self-experimenters. So you're welcome to join, even if you don't have any self-experimentation ongoing, or you want to learn something and you are really lost. There is a huge community, which is usually there are 10 to 20 people on the call, and somebody is always presenting some experimentation and gets feedback, or even somebody is just planning something. It just has some vague ideas. We really help to providing feedback. So 7 p.m. Copenhagen, Geneva time every Thursday. It's a self-experimentation Zoom, and Gary Wolf and really cool people from Quantified Self are there.
Fantastic. We will make sure to get them in the show notes.
Yes.
And I think I have to get my buddy Frederick to join in. So he also did the study on glucose in regards to eating protein before and after the carbs, because he read a study that if you ate the proteins first, I think it was, then your glucose response would be lower, but you had to wait in half an hour. So he did that experiment where he did everything the same day. And the day after he tried that, he ate half of the proteins, or just ate the proteins first and then didn't wait as long. I think it was something like that, to measure if there was that big of a difference of like that half an hour. Because when you're sitting socially, it can look weird that you eat part of your plate and then you sit and wait for half an hour. So yeah, I love those kind of people that actually test stuff out. It's fantastic to figure out. But yeah.
Yes,
So
social awkwardness. Yes. Tell me
yes.
more. I was 1 week on a keto diet when I got the boxes, I was living in US and then totally avoiding people for a week, right?
Yeah.
You get per day, you get 4 little boxes. Everything gets microwaved or just hot water or just like something to put in the water. And then you have to avoid people.
Yeah. So he also had the strict, like, going to bed at the same time, cooking in the same way, same morning routine, really to make sure that it was as stable as possible, right?
Yeah.
But even that. So, Kate, what's one of the things that surprised you or that you see has a strong impact of our quality of life that you've seen now from the research, so that is taking some of your time?
Right. So I have to say that, we discussed about sex, but sexuality is really, really, really important aspect of quality of life. Like, forget about telling people you have to move more and do 10,000 steps and eat this and that. Like, really, we are really creatures of habit, and we do not want to listen to all this and apps telling us unless we really have a strong motivation. But I could see that underneath quality of life, really feeling good about your own body, and sexuality seems to be this overarching, holistic, how do I say, component of our quality of life, which then really encapsulates our physical feeling, right? Physical health, right? If you have pain, then maybe things are not going to work, right? And the second one is psychological, right? You feel good with yourself, and there's positive emotions and self-esteem and everything else. Then the third one is the social relationship and also the sexuality, quality of sexual health. And actually World Health Organization defined sexual health only recently. And then the fourth one is environmental, right? So imagine that everything else is in order, but I don't know, you don't feel safe because somebody will enter and kill you in your bed or whatever, like, sorry to say, but in some circumstances that's exactly what's happening. Then you really may not feel comfortable. Actually, the environmental aspects is a home environment, right? So like, okay, things are. I want to be sexual, but I better pay attention, like, to the enemy or something can happen to me. Never mind. Oh, I just wanted to say, as a computer scientist, I have realized how important it is when I started to work at the Stanford Medical Center and discussing with the hospital staff and patients, and specifically the surgeons. So I was working with the bariatric surgery, but also with transplant surgeons. And then I realized that the moment when there was a lot of aspects of discussions of the moment when, for example, somebody gets a new transplant, new liver or other organ, and it starts working, and then the sexuality comes back. There's this first moment they are going to call the doctor. It's not that they, it's not the moment when the blood tests are okay or something. Like, of course, these things will happen at some point, but they feel good with themselves, and the sexuality aspects come back. And then the surgeon told me himself, he says, you know what, they don't care about they cannot eat, they cannot move, they just like, I can have sex again, this is amazing, my life is back. So that was a long time ago, and I heard it and I was like, okay, great. And then the other aspect is of when we start to become very unhappy in our lives, like unconsciously we have everything, we can move, we are happy, we are healthy, we are safe and everything, and then the sexuality aspect is missing, then unconsciously they're getting this depressive symptoms. And anyway, I don't understand everything from it, but this aspect is like, if it doesn't work, then it influences so many other domains, and if it works, then it positively influences so many other domains. So driven by this question and by this curiosity, as a computer scientist, I started a medical degree last year in clinical sexology, and I'm happy to say that it's an ongoing study. I'm going for my lectures on Fridays, Saturdays. It's evening.
How do you study that on a Friday evening? So like, how does that work?
it is Saturday. It's for people who already work, right? So it's this continuous education. It's this additional education. It's not. I could become a coach afterwards. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use this knowledge to translate it into better protocols in my computer science domain, and working with more domain experts on understanding the sexuality and how technology can help. But yes, talking on Friday or waking up on Saturday morning and starting with going to the class and learning about erection dysfunction, for example, right? It's like, oh my God, I haven't yet had my coffee and I need to talk about this, right? And you have to make notes and everything. So that was sometimes funny, but there are heavier or lighter subjects in these courses, right? So there's also aspects of, unfortunately, abuse, but there's also an aspect of family and partnership and building a great relationship and love and desire and all of this is discussed along this 2 years course. And I'm happy that I went into this. I decided to do so because that will help me to understand this holistic aspect even better and ask better questions from computer science perspective still. Yes.
So what's something we can take away from that knowledge, Kate? Is there anything, like, apart from knowing that it's important, just like we know sleep is important, but we know, like, not eating before you go to bed, that helps. Is there anything from this line of study that can help us, something we can do in our life?
Focus on the quality of relationships. Focus on quality of relationships, really. And really, when looking into relationships, understanding what are the roles you're taking in these different relationships. And when you talk about romantic relationships, there's one of the models points out that there needs to be 3 components, right? So there's a commitment, and there's the desire, and then there's intimacy. So you may also kind of I understand that the persons who are going to listen to this are going to very much quantify it. So give me some tools, right? So think about your relationship in terms of are they satisfy your needs for this different these different needs, right? So there's, again, as I said, commitment, intimacy, and desire, right? So we also have been discussing on the class, for example, terms of casual sex. So what's casual sex? So maybe there is a desire and there's no commitment. There's no commitment, at least no long-term commitment. There is a desire, and then there's some aspects of intimacy. But then if one person falls in love with the other, then maybe the commitment will come, or maybe one person gets hurt, right? So there's also taking personal responsibility for behaviors and emotions and managing. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, like this 3 points or 5 points of do this or that, right? So I'm also learning as I also go with my personal relationship and reflecting. But along this course, I learned about the importance of quality of relationship, of communication in the in a relationship. Yeah.
Is it right to understand that a close sex in a close relationship will have a better effect for the body because you also have the commitment part than casual relationships or casual sex, but casual sex is better than no sex?
Correct. Yes. And along the discussions we had the discussions of who is there to, how do you say, how do you now express the fact that you may want to have a casual sex, right? And also for female, maybe more difficult, but for female, it's easier to approach the others. So we've been discussing the importance of apps and digital solutions, which can help people to bring with similar goals to this particular agreement. Okay, so we are here only for this aspects of our triangular needs, right?
Yes.
And then so we had a discussion on the role of intimacy in casual sex, right? So do you just go for desire, or do you allow for some intimacy? But what if you allow for too much intimacy, or what if the person doesn't want to get intimate, but you?
And how do we define being intimate?
Yeah,
Kate, how do you define being intimate?
We had huge discussion about this as well. And let's say it's a set of behaviors I'm not translating.
Mm.
I'm providing my own definition. What I remember from our discussions, right? I don't have my notes.
No.
So really a set of behaviors and also statements of the person feeling safe and secure, and it's also related to touching and being in specific atmosphere. It's also preparations for play or spending time together outside of sex, but also it's post-care, right? Like how do you leave the person and how do you take care of the person from far in between, right? Do you stay in touch or you just meet for this particular beautiful event and then you just disappear in life? So there is a lot of variety of choices with respect to being intimate or not. And one of the colleagues or one of the persons was talking about her experience. She was pointing out that she was with somebody once was just for casual sex, but he did not want it to become so intimate, so he even avoided kissing her, right? So it's like
yeah.
right? So, and she pointed out to him, and no, I'm not going to do that because then there will be more and more commitment, or no commitment, like the intimacy and then maybe the commitment. So, but she said it was not such a good sex, right? Because then I missed this aspect. So yes. Anyway, we were talking about this because really thinking about the sexual health as a core of quality of life. I'm not going to make this statement right now. It's not a scientific statement, but I think we are there to discover something. Like we are so far like avoiding and really shy talking about this aspect of our life, but I think it's super important. So I don't know yet how much I will be able to contribute to this domain, but I'm hoping a lot. Watch out for my thesis. I'm going to write a thesis about this next year. So
Nice.
role of technology in sexual health as well. Yes, looking for participants.
Yes. Let me know once you need the participant studies. Then I will make sure to share it to see if there's any of the listeners that want to be part of a study like that. Unless they have to be in California.
No. It's going to be online or on your mobile, but it's going to be ethically approved and everything. So it's going to be proper scientific study I can publish later. Paper. Yes.
Fascinating. I look forward to following that research. Any other aspects that's kind of surprised you, or like that if you had to say like this is a one device I would use to improve my life, or?
Oh wow, that's a challenging question.
Or what have you used? What have given you the most kind of insight in your own life?
It's a combination. So because again, we're looking for so many different variables. So it's a combination of data sources I've been using for many years right now. So first, as I said, my story started with Fitbit, and then I included Apple Watch and then WeThings and the Samsung and all the devices which we've been using in the lab. So I was always testing everything. Also, we looked into sleep trackers, which were like bands, headbands, which like we abandoned. Zio sleep tracker, and we kind of abandoned, and they are bankrupt and non-existing anymore. But the really great device, which unfortunately did not really survive because something happened. Their update was Basis. Many of you know Basis Watch, which is one of the first one which is giving raw data on heart rate. So that's where I became addicted to heart rate. I was like, heart rate is so indicative. I had so many different patterns. I was annotating my dreams and my stress and my arguments with my ex-boyfriends and whatever. So everything was indicative. And then the glucose. And then for daily life, productivity, many of us now are stuck to our computers. Rescue time is your friend, I think. I mean, the other software. I should not promote any specific one, maybe because I'm not paid or whatever. I'm just saying what works for me. So rescue time to calculate how much is accomplished through the day and also through the week and month, and seeing different patterns of productivity. Additionally to this, I have maybe some of you know LifeSlice. LifeSlice is software which was developed by one of the quantified selfers, and it takes a photo of a screenshot of what you're working on the computer. So again, it's a computer-based computer, like PC, whatever, main machine, not the smartphone. Every hour, it takes a screenshot of the screen and then also the webcam. So I really love one day to analyze it for my facial expressions, like, you never know, right? What you're doing. I stop paying attention. But as I said, it's a variety of different tools, which then brings this semi-holistic point of view, because it's never really full, I think. Even myself, I'm discovering things about myself, looking at my patterns. And it's like, oh, I didn't know this. And so it's like, it's really nice to do self-experimentation for checking our self-beliefs, right? Self-beliefs. It's actually a long time ago, my self-belief was like sleeping short from time to time or every few days. It's not that bad, right? It's like, I can manage. I'm so energetic. I'm really good. Actually, in the first year of my studies, I did not sleep at least once a week. I did not sleep at night. I was working through the night, like really studying and doing my homework. And then I only, so I skipped from Sunday to Monday. I skipped sleeping from Sunday to Monday for 2 semesters. That's nothing. I can do that, right? Now I'm not able to do that anymore.
No.
But yeah, so self beliefs, checking our self beliefs, and then testing them and understanding later what are the influences of other aspects of our life. Yeah. And in personal life, and again, I'll come back to the sexuality. I learned a lot of things, but at least one thing which I learned, and again, it comes back with respect to our quality of our relationship. The question which sexologists, the persons who are coming and giving us courses, the first question he told us was like asking the clients, are you suffering, right? Because it's like, if you are in a specific relationship, if you are having specific pattern of behaviors, and then maybe people tell you that's bad or whatever, you can ask, am I suffering? Or is anybody, is my partner, is somebody in my relationship suffering, right? So if there is a suffering, then there may be something improved. But if you are pretty fine with whatever you're doing, then don't listen to others, right?
That's a good point. Kate, time is running. Where can people...
Thank you for this discussion.
Where can people find out more about you and follow your work?
So very easy, qualityoflifetechnologists.com. Web. Actually, if you type my name, just find it on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm rather not on Facebook. There's too many outlets to take care of, and always welcome to drop me an email. I also have a mailing list, which is not really advertised on my website, which you can subscribe, can get an update from the lab, or recent updates from research. Yes, follow me, join me in this guest quest for making a better science for humanity, for us. This is the egoistic. It's for us to be healthier later in life, right?
Yes. Sure. If you could give yourself one advice to yourself 10 years ago.
Oh, that's such a excellent question. I would say more like calm down. You are on the right path. Calm down, meaning there were moments in my life when I was too aggressive and too demanding to others as well, I think. And I'm always nice, I hope. I hope that's seen. But sometimes I got the feedback that I wanted things too quickly and I was too impatient. And then when I see, just things came just naturally. It was just whatever you wish for it will demonstrate somewhere in the future. So there is a moment of enjoyment. Enjoy the journey. Yeah,
that's really good advice. I think too many of us, I can at least look back as well and see that enjoy the journey. And sometimes if it takes a half a year longer, it's not going to change when we're like 100 years old or 80 years old or 120. I hope to live till I get very old. Healthy and old, not old and sick, but actually taking care of myself. That's super.
Correct. Me too. Yes.
Kate, thank you so much for finding time in your busy schedule to share some of your research and knowledge.
Thank you, Max. looking forward to connect in the future when we are 100 years old, right?
Yes, yes.
Take good care, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.